I think there's a few more people that have been joined.
Oh.
That's okay, no, they didn't.
You're like, hey, covered, you got it.
You guys all the open houses this last weekend?
No,
This last weekend is the one that I didn't. Open
So
house.
all three of you did this last weekend.
no.
I did one, I'm going to do one this weekend. This weekend is nothing.
Yeah.
I just took it on. What else?
Yeah. Get some rest then.
And you guys.
Yeah. I know.
That's like you fancy.
Yeah. I remember.
That's softball for them.
Favorite party?
After that.
Yeah.
The softball for them.
Oh, yeah, I mean, of all the years, I've never gone to any softball.
That was fun.
It's a riot.
And every part.
Only
Late night.
Yeah, my wife picked it up. No.
Yeah. They did not the legal part there. But it's crazy.
Yeah, which was really dumb because I realized the next day I left my laptop and all that.
Oh my God.
And then, DSLR and all that stuff. It was all there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's, yeah. It's, they know how to work. That's all.
You recorded, you hear what you say.
Okay. All right, well, and it is 12:30. I'm gonna do just do a check here. So people on the, can you hear us? Is anybody there? All your faces?
Hopefully.
Anybody?
Yeah, we can hear you.
You can
All
hear
right.
us? Okay,
That's
good.
fine.
Then live, good. Okay, great. Well, thank you for being here. I'm Terry Belliot, and we have our wonderful team here of new agents as well, all the way up to seasoned agents sharing their successes and how you can actually get a commission check from doing open houses. So we're going to go through, do a little introduction, and if you can tell me your name and how long you've been in real estate.
Okay, yeah, my name is Brian Porter. I've been in real estate for a little over 7 years, a few weeks ago, actually. So, and I built my business through door knocking, as a lot of people around the office know. That was kind of my main thing. But open houses have always been something that I've really enjoyed doing, and mainly for my listings. But just over the years, kind of put together a plan, and I'm seeing 20+% of my business at this point coming from the open houses, from my listings. So. Yeah, it's been going well.
Awesome.
Yeah, so AJ Kidder, so this month is gonna be 4 years for me. Yeah, unlike Brian, I built most of my business through open houses. And now it's kind of going into some other lead generation, but for the first few years, it was all open houses. Yeah.
Hi, everybody, John Scholl, licensed just over a year now, and Campbell native, and been doing a lot of open houses, so. I like doing them, like Brian mentioned too, so when you like to do something, you enjoy doing it, you just, you kind of improve that skill, I think, and so we'll talk a little bit more about that soon.
Okay, so Brian did say what he does as far as other lead generation. AJ, you've been doing something else besides open houses?
Yeah, so I started doing cards in my farm.
Okay.
I don't do door knocking. Well, with pandemic, it was,
Right. Oh, yeah.
I came in and then figured it was.
That makes sense.
So I do that and a lot of I got clothes now. Yeah, so that's coming in.
And don't you do anything else in addition to?
I think the benefit of doing open houses is you're getting this huge pool of leads out of it. And so basically doing a lot of follow-up, nurturing with those leads, doing some direct lines to some folks, and doing a lot of follow-ups and email and phone calls to folks as part of that database.
So John, as a new agent, what level of success have you had from open houses?
So I think as a new agent, my level of success is going to be a little bit different than the veterans here. But in terms of, I got some data, 12 months of open houses that I did from June to June of this year. I did 29 open houses, identified 3 leads that I put offers in for without agents, and I closed on 2 of them. For one was a 1.4 million, and then one was just under a 1.1. The third one that I didn't close on was a $2.2 million offer, and we got blown out of the water by all cash. I mean, based on the hours that I put in, I think it's like, I calculated like it's the equivalent of like 3 weeks of a 9-to-5 job with like a $30,000 payoff. So it's like $10,000 a week. So the return is great. I think it's the numbers game. You got to get out there and do them. And there's some things that we can talk about improving your level of success.
AJ, and you, have you, as far as conversion, what has your senior level?
So my conversion is pretty high, because I have a different way of doing open houses. I'm not a quantity lead, just gather lead. I follow a lot of training that in my initial couple of months, there was a guy by the name John Morris, and he's a rock star now at KWRI. So he did a open house. I met him yesterday at a leadership conference, and I've always been thankful to him because he said that you can develop your own open house style. Mine is more consultative, so I try to identify if it's a looky-loo or a previous buyer, and then I can weed out, and if they're looky-loos, I say, go look at it, look at the house, I don't care. And if they're serious, then I'll spend some time with them and try to build some trust relationship right there. So my conversion with open houses, the leads that I get, I'd say is almost 70%.
That's great.
Yeah, 70%. That's awesome. Yeah.
So Brian, so for your conversions, and I'm going to combine those as well, because they'll be that same way. With your conversions been, as well as what do you do to prepare for an open?
Yeah. Yeah, I wish I could give you a number as far as what my conversion rate is. Like I said, open house is something I've typically done for my listings, but it's something I really enjoy doing. So I kind of go crazy with them a little bit sometimes. And I'm kind of like AJ, where I'm not trying to get every single person. You know, if I can get people to sign in, that's great. If I have somebody shadowing me, I can see if they can get all the people's emails and stuff. So I don't have any issues putting someone into my database and emailing to them forever. But they're going to be on a very different plan than the people that I've talked to, and I realize, okay, this is actually somebody that's a lead. You know, that kind of a person, they're going to get all kinds of crazy follow-up. I mean, they're going to hear from me like 5 times in the first like 3 or 4 days alone, videos and all kinds of stuff to make sure that I really make an impact there. But as far as just the business I've gotten from it, it's been really great. I mean, I can give just this year alone, I think I've done 3 transactions from open houses I've done over the last 6 months or something like that. And I'm always looking for buyers and sellers because you do a lot of open houses, you'll start to see people come in. And if you ask everybody kind of how they found you, you can figure out, do they have an agent? And you can also figure out, are they a neighbor? And so I'm always looking for those neighbors too. So if you're doing open houses, you're going really over the top and you're setting yourself apart, you get listings from it as well. And so this year, I think I've done 2 listings in a buyer from open houses. And that's just 1 year. So pretty typical. Okay, Terry.
Somebody said that the sound is not clear on the chat. I don't know what it, more of a Chelsea thing. Would you mind that someone talk to Chelsea on this?
Great, thank you. So what do you do to prepare for your open house?
What I do, it's well, a lot. I mean, it's kind of starts really early in the week for me, and so I'm going to decide what am I doing with my open house. Is it going to be something that's going to be as easy as putting together like a little, gift bag of like, a little Snickers bar and like some chips or whatever, something that I can do that's a little bit different than just putting food out. Or am I going to do something like those pizza parties that you see me do online, where I'll bring a pizza oven out and do something like that. So I have to decide what I'm going to do, and then based on that, I'm going to start creating marketing for it. And so the first couple of days of the week, I'm going to be sending marketing out to my social media database, my command database, and I'm going to be printing out postcards, and then coming up to the open house, I'm going to door knock 100 doors around that neighborhood, and that's how I'm getting my listing leads. Is those people are coming through. And so that's kind of typically what I do. And then as far as the house is concerned, all I want to do, with that, if it's my listing, I know everything about it. If I'm doing it for somebody else, I'll look through, a quick review of the pest report and the property inspection, just so I kind of have an idea if they have any information that, would be good for me to have. I'll look into, what the schools are and things like that in the area. And that's pretty much it.
And I know, John, you also do quite a bit of preparing before it open house. What's that look like?
So if it's a condo, I'm diving into a lot of the condo documents, because a lot of questions come up from folks about open house restrictions, pets, rental restrictions. So I'll focus on those sections, and those HOA documents can be pretty heavy. And some of them can be like up to 200 pages. So I make sure I'm very familiar with the inspections and disclosures also, and being a resource for folks and showing value that when they come in, that I'm knowledgeable about the house, that have a level of confidence about the house, and that puts them at ease. Additionally, I'll go to activist reports, and I'll get market data for the last month for sales in that area, whether it's a condo or single family home. And it shows the trends, and it shows average time on market, amount that is sold for, over asking. And then, I mean, basically every house is different, but it gives them some market ideas of how that zip code is performing. And so again, showing value to folks that come in. And then additionally, I would, to Brian, I bring in like these Madeline snacks that are prepackaged and do some dinner jazz music and just, again, checking with the listing agent if there's any interesting information that I need. A lot of, some listings will actually provide you an FAQ, a one pager. I think a lot of Dave Clark listings will provide you a high level FAQ, and just getting very familiar with the documentation.
Did you do anything different besides that?
Yeah, so I've done a lot of experimentation. So I do a lot of A/B testing too, by the way, on my open houses. There are times when I don't do no preparation at all. And the reasoning behind that is I go in, and if somebody asks me a question, I kind of tell them, hey, I usually start looking at the document that I do so much work. I tell them that I'll look at it when I find serious buyer. I use serious buyer. And so that starts the conversation going quite a bit. So that gives me a way to engage with them and to gauge whether how serious they are about this stuff. The one preparation that I consistently do is I know the neighborhood. I like what has been sold. What is the pricing? Where will it go? Because a lot of people are wondering about what do you think the price will be of this, right? So that's something I know I have on my fingertip is what sold last week, what sold 2 weeks ago, what is the sold data that is available, have I talked to pendings or not? But when it comes to actually knowing about the house, the reports and things like that, sometimes I'd rather them ask me questions. And then.
So whoever wants to answer the question, do you have a winning script or approach for people that come?
I can start with that one. I mean, winning script is, I don't know if I would necessarily call it a script, but when they're walking in, the first thing I want to do is try and figure out, like I said before, how did they find me? And so I'll just let them know, hey, did your agent send you over here? Did you just find us online? And then I'll either get, yeah, my agent sent me the property, or we found you on Redfin. And at that point, I'm thinking maybe they're a buyer. I'll dig more a little bit later. Or they'll say, oh, we're just a neighbor. And I'm like, okay, this could end up being a listing. So yeah, and then they will interview you. I've had people come in and call me the next week and like, hey, you're the best open house I'm going to do. So let's do it. And so that's kind of my first thing is I want to figure out where they came from. And then if I still don't know about agents at some point, the only other thing that I say kind of regularly is I'll let them know, hey, we got inspections, reports and all that online because I don't bring them with me. I'll let them know that I can send them an email with a link so that they can review that stuff. Even if they're not interested in the house, pretty much I find a lot of people will pretend that they're interested in the house, even if they're not interested in the house. And so I'll get their email that way, and I will just let them know, like, hey, if you have an agent, they can totally get that for you. Otherwise, if you don't, I can send that over to you right now. And that's usually, if I was already thinking they might be an actual buyer, that's usually how I'll figure it out. As far as scripts, pretty much it.
From a script standpoint, it has evolved over 3 years or 4 years. Again, with consultative approach, you're trying to find if, as Brian said, are they real buyers? Are they sellers? Are they neighbors who want to put their house on market? So you want to identify very early in your in your conversation, where are they? And who are they, kind of thing. So and do they have representation? Right? A lot of times when people have representation, I hear a lot of agents say, hey, just let them go. I use that opportunity to tell my value proposition still. I'll still give them I will never force them, but I'll still give them my value. And then let them decide what they want to do. And I've had success on that too, is once they hear my value prop, they'll come back in a couple of weeks and say, hey, I want to go with you. And I'm knowing well that they had an agent at some point, kind of thing. But I'm not telling them, hey, go with this or that. If they tell me that they have an agent, I'm like, wait, you have an agent. I'm glad you have representation. So there is a lot of trying to understand the motivation, their motivation for buying in that area, because that allows me to find out if they are really interested in that area. In my consultative approach, I also try to find out what the budget is, because a lot of people will come to a 2.5 million house and the budget is only 1.5. And that just doesn't, then you have to tell them that don't look.
Yeah.
It's in a different place that you're going for. So.
And John?
Yeah, in terms of scripts, I think as a new agent, so there's so many resources out there for us to tap from. I mean, Meg does like a weekly script session. I went to a couple of those. Basically, there's documents that you can download that really helps you. I think with scripts, it's not more or less memorizing word for word. It's basically understanding the style and then adapting it to make it your own. And so to Brian's point, and to AJ's point, the first thing I'll do is when somebody comes in is, I greet them, introduce myself, and then ask them about how they found about the open house. Again, that identifies if they're a neighbor or an agent or if they found it online or whatnot. And then from there, I've tweaked a few things over the time that I've done them, where in the beginning as a new agent, I would go and I'd just be like, start asking them all these questions. And I'm like, let's back off a little bit. Let's give them a little bit in the beginning, quick introduction, build some comfort. Hey, I'm John. How'd you find out about this? Oh, great. Well, let me tell you a quick, we had a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. I love this feature of the house. Make yourself at home. If you have any questions, again, my name is John. So then they basically do their rounds and then they move back, and then I can basically then build the conversation upon after they've had some time to look at the open house, because people don't like it when we respond right away. So give them a little bit, identify that, and then have further conversations with them later.
I wanted to add something here, which is kind of recall when John was talking about it, is greeting them at the beginning. A lot of agents don't do it. I feel like it's really pleasant and just breaks the ice a little bit. So you have to have a smile and you have to greet them very well. Let them see the house as John was saying, come back. And I always tell them, hey, go look around the house, come back, and then we can chat. And in that conversation, as you're saying, don't bombard them with just questions. It has to be give and take. You got to give some, you got to get some kind of a thing. So go ahead.
So after you build rapport and you have a conversation, you can always come back. How and when do you take detailed notes? Especially if you've got 12, 20 people going, at what point do you start writing down, the information that you found?
In found so far.
You
It's
just keep it in
tough.
your head, or-
Yeah, it's tough because the point is there are only you can take the contact information down, and they'll usually, and we'll come to that, is usually I don't even ask for contact, because if I talk to them for 5 minutes, chances are that they just give me the contact information. At which point, once they give me the contact information, I kind of try to note down very quickly certain things that I've heard on the notes on the side, but it is tough to capture everything. After about 5 minutes, I tell them, hey, look, there are other people, so let's have a follow-up conversation. I want to understand more about you, and we can set up, and then I can get more into it. But you're right, I do forget some of the details, because if you're talking to 10 people, it's tough. Yeah.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I mean, I try to keep it in my head, and then once they leave, I'll quickly jot down just a couple base level things that will trigger me to remember the other stuff. And then as soon as I get like a break, I'll go back and I'll write it down. So I usually keep like a notebook in just a kitchen cabinet or something that I can use for that. And that seems to work pretty well for me. If I know it's going to be an absolutely nuts open house, which was basically every open house for 6 years, I would, if I could, bring somebody with me. So that I've got somebody at the door. A lot of times it was my wife, because she would scan people an iPad and be like, hey, can you sign in? And they would never say no. And so something like that would work. So I could like have her kind of taking notes and be like, hey, come over here. And so she can kind of hear it also. So don't be afraid to bring someone in with you to help out with something like that. Going forward, we're probably not going to have as much of an issue, because I don't really see us having, I'm not getting, 50 groups in my open houses right now. So, yeah.
And so also this, you said something about iPad. So are there certain tools that you use to gather client information?
Yeah, they're great apps for that. One of them is called, I think it's Open House Pro. That's a good one. And what I have noticed, I like it for a couple of reasons. It doesn't always work, because I had an open house recently where everyone was kind of staged outside, and it was the only good place to get the information. The iPad kept overheating. So you have the paper with you too, in case the iPad is giving you issues, or there's just too many people to hand it to everybody. But I do like those apps, because they're having to type their phone number in, and I find that people will less often give you a fake phone number when they're typing it in like they're calling someone, versus when they're writing it down. For some reason, when they're writing it down, they'll give me fake numbers more often. And I can read everything, because people will go through and they will really fudge things as much as they can. So I'm like, you're John's. And I'm like, but when they're typing it in, they can't really do that as much. So I like those apps a lot.
Yeah. So on the tools, I have started writing it myself.
Yeah.
I don't let them write. I've worked with some tools and stuff like that. And if you guys want to understand tools, then we have a resident expert in Dimitri. He does another level of tool and automation on his open house. I've had opportunities to talk to him, and I've got blown away by what he does. He's like, everything comes to him, right? So he has the whole thing, like people actually put their information and he gets a text listing confirmation, and he sends out packages. So this guy is expert in that.
Well, if you want me to just give a very quick comment, it's not just about the tool, it's about the whole flow and how do you get people to use the tool, right? So another part of the tool is not just a technical tool. I also put up a board, like a restaurant have those sandwich boards with menu. I put up the board at the entrance to obstruct the entrance.
We talk about
And I stand there, they approach, I greet them, and I say, could you please sign in? So they cannot just walk in without signing in. About 1 in 100 who turns away and walks away. And while they are signing in, I'll start asking them questions, what brings you here? And I ask them to text to sign in. So I get the true mobile number, because sometimes they're writing a line, sometimes, right? So anyway, I don't want to hijack the meeting, but
Yeah,
that's
so we've masterminded,
Right.
so I know, that's why I know he's done
Right.
very well on this stuff. So if anyone wants to do kind of thing, talk to me too, because I have not done that. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So when you're holding open a listing for someone else, how and what do you communicate to the listing agent? And how do you build trust to become their go-to person?
I can tell you, this is a super important one. I think building relationships with the listing agent is critical for you to have repeat open houses. Building trust, building rapport, building communication with them. And so a lot of times throughout the open house, I'll be taking notes on my laptop, and just with the notes about comments that I hear people say, or questions or things in the background, good feedback for the listing agent, whether it's good, bad, things that they like, things that they don't like. And at the end of the open house, making sure I'm preparing the summary. I'll stay at the open house after it closes to prepare this summary, because it's fresh in my mind. Prepare the email to the listing agent about, hey, here's how many groups came through. Here's some questions that came up that I couldn't answer. And here's some basically some things that people liked about the house or didn't like about the house. And just being very showing value to the listing agent. And that seems to be like people really appreciate that on the selling side.
So everything that John said, I also stay back and put the stuff right there because that's freshest on my mind. So I'll put the things most of the time right there after the open house. Markets go through cycles, and now listing agents will be chasing you to do the open house. But there will come time when you'll be chasing the listing agent for open houses. So it's always good to start adding that value to the listing agent. People have to, I do a lot of open houses per day. People going to the open houses have gone back to their team and told them how good their open house experience was. There's a reason why they keep giving open houses, and that's the reason, because people come back and tell them what happened.
And you might have agents chasing you down, you know, when it's a cooler market to do open houses, but you may not necessarily get the first weekend open houses. And that's what I mean, first, second weekend, they're pretty good, but those first weekend open houses are awesome. And agents really want to, I mean, people have done what you've done, you know, my open houses, and those are the people that I immediately are, okay, that's my first go-to call every single time I need somebody to run open house, because when I go and I give the report, the person that ran the open house is not going to give the report of how the open house went to the seller. And so when I have somebody open my house and then they call and they're like, they have absolutely zero report to give me and have no idea who was in the house or how many people or anything like that. Now I don't have any report to give the seller. And so I have to try to explain to them how I was basically not involved in their open house at all. And so I want to be able to explain to my seller what happened at the open house like I was there. And if you do that for an agent, you will be their go-to like forever.
Once you get the leads from the open houses, what do you do with them?
So this is interesting. And I mean, open houses are no good if you're not going to do anything with the leads. In what Brian said early on, you want to identify which are the leads you want to, that 1 week you just want to count them, because you have already identified that this can be your paycheck. This could be a transaction. Those are the ones, and I segregate them too. I split them up. I am like going after the ones that I feel like I have to establish a rapport with them in that first week. The rest still go in the database. You still want to do 5 to 6 touches in the first week. And then you do want to do, so it could be a combination of text, email, call, and then text again, or some combination of that. But every time you do that, you come back with something different in terms of contribution. Don't keep asking, are you ready to buy? Are you ready to buy? Are you going to buy? You just have to give them something more than that. And I try to find something, a thread which says, okay, here you came to this house. Here is what is going on in this neighborhood. I'll tell them that, hey, there are this many pendings in that neighborhood. So I'll give them different options, or the listing agent said that this is what the activity was. I'll go ask the listing agent, say, this is what, if there's permission for me to share that information. So you can share that. They start getting a sense that you are giving them a lot of value. Now, what we discussed yesterday in our leadership, MCPD leadership, is Command actually, and then this, I'm going to bring the Command in here, now has the 36 touch built in with just 4 smart plans actually. So you can do literally 36 touches to a thing from the moment you have gotten a lead, just by 4 things only. And that is bi-weekly neighborhood nurture. That can be done for the buyers too, not just for sellers. You don't need an address. So what you can do is you can just pick the neighborhood that they visited you, put a tag in there that's the neighborhood, that's the house that they visited you. And there you have your 18 birthdays, anniversary, and there was one more, I forget. But that will give you 36 touches, which is what MIA tells you that you have to do. And because most of the time that lead, in my case, very rarely has converted before 6 months. So you don't want to be in touch just in that first week. You want to be in touch for that long.
So Brian, you touched on a little bit, like after the open houses, like your text and videos.
Right.
Share about that.
Yeah, so I mean, it's, I use a lot of video in my business. It's always worked well for me. And so what I'll do is they're gonna end up going into a different plan right off the bat because the open house leads, they're just, I can't put them in the same bucket as like somebody I met door knocking, had a, great long conversation and they're not, doing anything right now. Like these are right now leads, and I don't want them to go meet the next person and write the offer with them. So they're going to be in a much like a higher intensive plan, and they're going to get, the next day, even the same day, typically, if I have time, I'll shoot them a text and thank them for coming by. The next day, they're going to go into my system so I can tag them. I can put them all into the right smart plans and everything. There are a bunch of smart plans for open houses in Command that you can use that'll run, for a week or 2 weeks or whatever. So they're going to get calls from me a few times in that first week. They're going to get a few emails from me because every time I don't get them, I'll leave an email and we'll kind of alternate. So, the next day, the day after they meet me, I will send them a quick video. It's just in my Gmail. I use a service called BombBomb for that. And I hold up a little whiteboard that's got their name on it. So it'll say, hi AJ or whatever. And so in the thumbnail, as soon as they open the email, it's got me holding the sign and it's kind of like, it's moving and stuff. And then I just do a quick like, hey, thanks so much for coming by. It was so great to meet you. I'll be in touch, but here's my email. If you need anything, let me know. And I'd love to go over some of the other details about this house. And then what I'll do if it's a really hot lead is I'll also look and see, okay, what else might be out there. Because if they're not interested in this house, I want them to understand that I'm here for them for other houses too. I wasn't just connected to that one. And so I'll even look and see is there anything like off market, even if it's kind of grasping at straws a little bit, because then I can throw that in there too and just let them know that there's actually another property just around the corner. It's not even hit the market yet. So it's kind of like, what kind of value can I give them? But other than that, they're all going to go into my same system as far as my, it's like a 50-something touch system. But that first 2 weeks is going to be much more intensive. So you should be picking up the phone and calling them a few times in that first week at least.
John, you anything?
Yeah, so, again, KW Command has a bunch of smart plans. I plug folks into, it does take some time to set up. But I have found, I've done it a few times, personalized videos after somebody has left, I'll record it in the house. And then thanking them for coming by and then sending it to them. Again, personalized phone calls. What I found really interesting though is that I can't predict who's gonna follow through with the sale or not. Like some people have really surprised me after following up with them. I just got their information to send them some inspections and disclosure. That's usually how I'll get their information. Be like, hey, I'd love to send you inspections and disclosures. Must write down your information. Yeah, sure. And then I think, okay, let's see what comes of it. And all of a sudden, they read it and we set up, a little discussion about, what their goals are. And all of a sudden they're like, hey, I want to put an offer in. I'm like, well, I could have guessed that. Like things really surprise you with open houses. So as much as you try to figure out if this is a super hot lead, I mean, they could just be acting that way just because, I don't know, maybe that's just how they're socially awkward. And it's just easier for them to say, oh yeah, we want to put the offer in the house. And then I never hear from them again. So I really I think I try to do my best with my caliber, my compass to determine hot leads, but I guess it's just weird. It's just as a new agent, I'm still trying to figure it out.
Something that both of them brought that is very important and I tried very hard to do this in my first communication to the buyer. You have to understand that they are going to 10 open houses. They will not remember it. Just take it from them. So both of you have given me some idea because I try very hard in my text to tell them who I am and where they met them. But this is great because if you can do a video with their name on it, they're gonna see your face and then you're doing a video at the house. You combine both of them together, they are bound to remember that that's where they met you, right? Because they will not remember. Go ahead.
What are you using to send the video messages?
It's my phone. It's my iPhone.
Right.
I bought a gimbal. But it took too much time to get it all figured out. So I just record and maybe 20 takes later, I'll get one good one I can send.
But I'm just curious, how do you send? Do you something like bomb?
No, I just
Load
text.
video, with just a video inside the text
Yeah,
without the
video
web.
to text.
Just a iPhone video.
That's it.
And I know that works too. There's an agent that used to be out of this office, and for the life of me, I can't remember his name, but that's what he did. Every time the lead would leave the house, he would immediately do a quick video, and they were getting video by the time they parked their car at their next destination. And he was absolutely crushing it with that. Good idea there, both of you. Yeah, that's good.
So, any memorable moment from, your open house? Good or bad?
I had a pretty interesting one. So this is the house in San Jose. This is a really busy weekend. It was just me. I think I had like maybe over 60 people on one day and on a Saturday and then 60 people on a Sunday. And so this couple I was speaking with asked me why the owners are selling. And I said, well, unfortunately the owner passed away peacefully, with his family. And then all of a sudden I hear like near the doorway, what was that? And this couple were like, what'd you say? I said, oh, well, the owner passed away peacefully in the home and we have to disclose that. And they looked at me and were like, hell no. And then they left like that. And so some people were really freaked out about that. I go, well, it's a circle of life. And it was a natural causes, it's a good thing. Like, hell no. And they were gone. So it bothers some people. Obviously, that's why we have to disclose it, right? So.
Yeah, that's fun.
I always tell people about my memorable, and some of you guys have heard this, is that in 2019, when I started, it was pretty slow. After the season used to get over, Terry, that people never used to come to the open houses. I had a day product listing that stayed on the market for about 5 months. It was on Homestead. A Homestead in front of Kaiser. I sit there and there'll be like 2 people show up.
I remember that house.
Everyone remembers that house.
The rickety path out front.
Yeah. So one of my most memorable things was one day I was sitting there and 2 people showed up. And when you have 2 people, you're trying to engage them and keep them as long as what else you got to do, right? In half an hour, you're talking like everything that you can think of. Both of them converted guys for me. So this goes on to show that it could be the worst open house you think, but you shouldn't worry about that. It's your paycheck right there. So you've got every time somebody walks with that, even if it's one person, to say, look, it may not be this house, they may buy 6 months later, but you got to give them the whole thing to them, because you never know when they'll convert on that. So that was one of my memorable things.
Right, anything?
Memorable. I mean, yeah, I can give you a whole bunch of stories of just really cool experiences of people walking in and listing the next week, things like that. I would say the most memorable experience was I was selling a house for a couple that was in the middle of a very nasty divorce. I only say nasty because I was in the kitchen with them one time and they were both screaming at each other and I was standing in between them. So I was a therapist. Yeah, as a counselor. I think I could legally call myself, but I didn't do that. But yeah, so that was interesting. And so they had both moved out and then I guess they got into a fight in the other place that they were staying. And so I show up for my open house at like, it was 12:50 or something, starting at 1. And walk in and he had, I guess, left the other place and he was sleeping in the middle of the floor on a lone mattress. The entire place was an absolute just complete wreck. And I had to kick him out of the house and run around throwing things in closets, in about 5 minutes. And it was one of the, and it seems like every time something like that happens, people start showing up 3 minutes early.
Yeah.
So, every time. And if I get there early and I'm prepared, it's usually like that slow first 20 minutes. And that was definitely the most memorable for sure.
I think one thing that you mentioned about people showing up early, this is something that I just recalled, is that don't turn those folks away.
Yeah.
I had somebody who came in 15 minutes early before the open house, and it was a neighbor, and she ended up wanting to list her home. So I would say, stay open, if you've got the time afterwards, keep the doors open even after you close it a little bit, because you never know when it's gonna happen.
Take that advice, because I have closed many after the fact, because there you get one-on-one. And they are so appreciative that you have kept it open for them. And I've gotten so many closures from staying past at 4:30 and just talking to them.
Excellent. I think one other thing that really struck me after an open house is as I was leaving in my car, I had a neighbor who was walking and he flagged me down in the middle of the street. And he told me to roll down my window and he's like, hey, I just want to thank you for not being another a-hole agent when I came in, even though I was a neighbor. He's like, you know, I really appreciate you had a great conversation with me. You didn't treat me any differently as a neighbor. And he said, you know, if my daughter-in-law wasn't licensed, I'd use you as my agent. And he was like, just thank you again for just being cool. And I'm like, wow, that's, you know, that just shows if you treat everybody the same, you never know how things will play out.
Which agent tells neighbors to not, I mean, I have no idea.
Well, you see, well, I mean, that's just a testament that we don't know what
There are so
other
many
agents are doing, right?
Right.
The people are watching you, they're observing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And it's not abnormal at all. I mean, we don't typically, if I'm going to open houses now, I've got buyers with me, and so everyone's friendly when you have a buyer. But I remember going to open houses before I got into real estate, or when I was getting my license and trying to get used to pricing and all of that stuff. And as soon as I would tell them I'm just, just kind of getting into the business, half the agents would never want to talk to me, and I actually had agents be like, okay, great, well, have fun, and just go back to whatever they were doing.
Well, that's crazy, because we're here in a business where we might want those agents to come in and work for us, right? And
Right.
so, I will have a conversation with those people and say, oh, well, where are you gonna hang your license?
Yeah.
It's a great opportunity to be able to, to convert them over.
100%, okay, I do broker tours for those agents only. Because that is residual income. Profit share is a great thing, actually, guys. So do broker tours, you will meet a lot of agents. You can bring one of them here, it's residual income for life.
It can open houses not just for buyers and sellers, but for other agents as well.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely a balance between putting all your time and attention to a neighbor versus other potential leads. So obviously you have to find a balance where you're giving those folks attention, but again, you're focusing on those other opportunities.
Right. That's a great point. Yeah, if you've got 5 people in the house and one of them's a neighbor, and 4 of them are buyers, you're definitely gonna focus a bit more on, the buyer. But being friendly to everybody and hospitable is important. Not everyone's that way.
The other thing is you have to watch out. Neighbors will come and start telling us about the neighborhood. That's not a memorable thing. Another thing, and I have to literally sometimes shut them up. I'm like, yeah, I find a good way of saying, yeah, this is more detailed than I want to know, or the buyers want to know about this neighborhood and this house, or
They hijack.
I hijack the whole
So
conversation.
to your point, AJ, also be really careful when you're asking the neighbors about the neighborhood.
You don't,
Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe
You don't want
keep those conversations away from other folks,
Yeah.
because you don't know how that's gonna play out.
and that happens all the time. So Veda,
Yeah, I have a question. Thank you for sharing all the useful tips about hosting open houses. My question to you is, has it ever happened with you in the initial career times or what, like you did open houses weekend after weekend and there was no lead conversion? What kept you still going? Were there any moments that,
It was-
you already felt off? Do you have any tips for making other agents feel like this is what you can do?
so Sumedha, that it took almost 5 months or 6 months of doing open houses when I was able to close. First, the thing that you have to remember is that, as we have talked about, is you still should be getting something to write offers. You may not get the offers, but if you're not even getting to the offer stage, then you may want to look at if there's something else you want to do. That means you are not, either you're not qualifying or you're not connecting with a lead that you're getting on the stuff. So something needs to be tweaked in your process. So I wrote offers, but the first contract never came till about 6 months later after I started. So I was doing open houses, but it didn't happen until 6 months after.
And I'd imagine once you got that first transaction, that was probably pretty steady at some point
Yeah.
after that. Yeah, because it's the same thing with door knocking. I mean, I can't speak so much for the open house thing because it's something I love doing, but it was not really my strategy. Door knocking was my strategy. And so I can answer based on that. It took me because I was going after listings, it was a bit of a longer runway. I think it took me 6 months or so to get my first like really, real business going. And then, a couple months after that start closing, and then it just started all happening at once. But my favorite Gary Keller quote, one of my favorite Gary Keller quotes is, it's not about being in the right place at the right time. It's about being in the right place all the time. And so I knew, okay, other people are doing this. It's working for them. All I need to do is keep doing it. But you can also do it possibly better. And so I would say if you're doing it for a while and you're getting frustrated, go find somebody to shadow. Find somebody that's doing killer open houses, just go see how they're doing it, and maybe you can tweak something. No matter what you do, if you're doing the same lead gen and lead follow-up, you're being consistent, it's going to happen. But you can certainly shorten the runway by shadowing somebody that's really doing it at a high level for sure.
Additionally, some open houses that may be stale, as they call it, may be on the market for a while without price adjustments, and you're hosting it and you feel like it's a waste of time. There's a lot of professional development that you can build on during these open houses. So there's a lot of material that we have, a lot of KW training material you can read up on. You can focus on some of your scripts. And so there's a lot of development that you can do during these, if it's some downtime.
This is a good time right now to really get yours on your scripts and stuff. I keep testing scripts in slower open houses, different things, different stuff. Continue to think. One other comment that I remember, Carl Batiste, who's a general manager at KW Las Gatas, he did a class here. These guys used to do a great class in open house class. It was out of the ballpark. In open houses, he used to say that 1 week of hell. And so basically you get a lead, and for the next 7 or 8 days, you just continue to pound that stuff to get an answer for them. It might benefit you if they say go away, but then you're not going to waste time on that lead.
There's nothing Brian is
7
saying.
days of pain.
Yeah, 7 days of pain, and then you don't have this.
Brian, I'll touch base on that door knocking, right? Do you combine door knocking prior to doing your open houses?
Yeah.
If they're,
Yeah, and I would highly recommend it. I mean, even if you're not interested in door knocking, I mean, just do it for open houses because it's the easiest way. You might find that you like it. It takes a while to get to the point to where you're comfortable door knocking, but once you get to that point, it's honestly my favorite part of the day, just walking down the street and just meeting the neighbors. I don't get to do it as much anymore, but I really enjoy it. And when you're doing it for open houses, you're just inviting them to something. You're saying, hey, we're gonna have some refreshments and things like that out. If you wanted to come by and see, the neighbor's house or whatever, it's just the easiest thing ever because you're just telling them, I tell them right off the bat, like my normal script, I'm not gonna ask you to buy a house or sell a house or anything crazy like that, I promise. Because I still want the lead. And so if they're thinking about buying or selling a house, a lot of times they'll tell me right there. But then I'll say, no, I just actually wanted to invite you to an open house. We're doing it at your neighbor's house down the street. We're gonna have some food and stuff like that. If you want to come out, we'll see. So you can do that. And then as you get better and more comfortable with that, then you can start adding in, getting their contact information too. Like, what do you have to offer them? For me, it's a market report every month. And so open houses, if you're trying to get into door knocking, I can't think of a better way to do it.
Perfect thing, because especially for your own listing, there's nothing better. If you're doing an open house on your own listing, I do it. I don't do it for other listings, but I do it for mine.
there's one final question before I open up for questions. So, any best practices or tips for everybody?
Open houses are very personal in my opinion. You can build your own best practices. There are a set of things that you need to understand. What are you there for? Sometimes you get too caught up in that we're trying to sell that house. I've heard many times people say, I never get anything from the open house because they're trying to sell just that house. You are trying to sell yourself. You're not selling the house. I mean, you are doing a good job of selling the house too, but the primary purpose is to sell yourself. And past that, look at yourself, what you can do in the follow-up. And that will determine your strategy. I know that if I collected 30 leads, I won't be able to follow up with them. And I would not know anything about those people. So that's why I collected a little bit less so that I can follow up better. But some people collect those 30 because it is filling the funnel at the top. And if the conversion is also 5%, you're still okay. You still from that 30, you're gonna pull something out of it. So it's just your own strategy of and how you want to go with it and what's your personality is how you develop your open house skill. Just look at yourself and say, hey, this is what I'm comfortable with and go with that stuff. Would be my last comment.
I think it's a great lead generating activity. I mean, you get to sit in a comfortable house, people come to you. And so for new agents, I would say, work with your mentor, just maybe get really comfortable. If you're not comfortable being on stage, as they call it, because that's what you are, when you're in an open house, you're on stage. And so I know for me in the beginning, it was a little nerve-wracking in the beginning to kind of overcome the barrier, but I found that as I became more knowledgeable about the house, about the recent sales in the neighborhood, then I had a level of confidence going into the open house that I can answer any questions that came up. And that really helped me overcome that first barrier. So for new agents, put the time in, do the research, work with your mentor, do the script training with Meg, and the resources and tools are there. I think just like doing anything many times, you refine it and find what works for you to be comfortable in that environment.
Yeah, I would, and I like what AJ was talking about as far as the time you spend with each lead, because that's something that I learned through Cody Gibson. I don't know if he runs what is it, something property group, but United, yeah. And he was talking about it. He's basically saying, if you're the type of person that's going to have that funnel and go after a ton of leads, you want to be spending much less time with those leads. So the more leads, whatever your strategy is, if your strategy is like, Brian Buffini, I think is, I'm going to get 50 people, I'm going to have super, tight relationships with all of them. The less people that you have as far as leads, the more time you're going to want to spend with each one. And I really, I like that people were also touching on just, it's not, it really isn't about selling a house. What you say, it is about selling yourself, and people will work with who they know, like, and trust. And so my entire goal when I'm at an open house is not necessarily to sell them something right now, because they could be months out. I want to see how much can I get them to know, like, and trust me while I've got them in front of me. Because once they go into my system, the better I did at that open house, the better that relationship is going to be, and the better chance I'm going to have actually connecting with them again going forward, and then just be really consistent with it. But it's an awesome way to build a business. I knew a lot of agents that got in when I started, and they were, easily capping, 5-6 houses, within the first 12 months, just by doing open houses every single weekend. So, yeah.
Real great advice. Okay, so we'll open up the floor. Any questions for them?
I have a question. So in addition to all the knowledge and all the research that you've gathered, what kind of physical material do you take in addition to a flyer or something to the open houses and also to door knocking? What are you giving them some material for them to take back, and what kind of material?
I used to take flyers to the open houses. I stopped doing it. And because I never found that people to call me because of the flyers. And all it became at that point was that then it gave me a chance not to talk to them. And so these days, nobody asks for flyer. If somebody asks also for flyer, I just tell them, hey, what do you want to know? And give me, if you want to know more, then I will give me your contact and I will send you whatever you want to know. I can tell you right now, most of the things. And if I can't, then give me your stuff, contact, and I'll send it to you. So I've stopped doing that. And I've seen no difference. In fact, I like it even more, not having that.
Yeah, the same thing. I mean, for the door knocking, yeah, I'm giving them a postcard. So it's just whatever it is. Like if I'm doing like one of my little pizza party things, I'll put, I've got like a template I use for that. And it's just got the invite on it. It's just one page only. Sometimes I'll do one where I have like my information on the back, free market report or whatever. And then so that's what I'm doing for that. As far as the property brochures, when I was holding open houses for other agents, I would bring them, but I kind of like what he's saying, because that was putting me a little bit more defense. I like to go after their information. But if you are going to bring brochures, just make sure you check with the listing agent, because I did have agents that were going to my open houses and replace my $3.50 fold out really nice brochures that I spent all that money on. And then all of a sudden I come back and it's just their information that's left there and my stuff's in the closet or something. So make sure you check with them first. 'Cause if they're doing something really, really fancy, they may not want that. And then that's pretty much it. I mean, I bring food and snacks and stuff, but I don't bring the property inspections or anything like that. Like I said earlier, I want to be able to send it to them instead of just giving it to them, right there.
So I do the open house templates that we have through the Williams Command and put something together. It's got my branding on the bottom and automatically populates. And then also with the AccuList reports, it also puts my branding on the bottom. As a new agent, I kind of want to get my face out there, as well as putting out as many open house signs as I can. And just so people start to recognize you and your face.
Other questions? I think that it looks like there might be 12 questions in the chat. I'm not sure. Can you guys hear? You have any questions from there?
I would just, how about like, what would y'all say about purposeful open houses? Because I know I see some people's business like slow down because they're going for like the top, most expensive. And I'm like, girl, what are you doing? So if y'all have anything to comment on.
So Lauren, very good question, by the way. I always, like a lot of times people, as you said, will go after the top, like $5 million house. And I also look at them and it's like, really, do you know that market? Do you have active clients in that market, right? Because you're not going to all of a sudden make yourself an expert in 5 million if you are a $2 million. Your thing is you can go from 2 to 3, but you're not going to go from 2 to 5. Plus, how much do you know about that area, right? Because if it's a $5 million house, it's in a completely different area than it is a $2.5 million house. So I said purposely, I do not hate those open houses because they are not my cup of tea. They are not, I mean, if that's the only thing left, I'll go there. I mean, if there's nothing else to do, go there, right? Just you have to sit for 3 hours. That's it. So now, if it's a $5 million house, it'll be a nice house. Right? So you can sit there, But so to me, stick to the areas where you're strong in, the price point that you're strong in, like have a band of that. And try, and if you want to build something in another area, then purposefully go to that area and build it, right? But yeah, great question. Just stay with your purpose of your open house. Just understand where you're going to get your brand from. And the other thing is, when repeatedly that visitors are seeing you in that area, that has an amazing impact. I can't begin to tell you how many people come back to the open houses in an area from week to week, and they're like, oh, I saw you last week. Oh, I saw you the week before that. That builds so much credibility. So great question.
I would take everything. No matter where, as a new agent, if it was there, I'd take it. Mobile home, I take it, single family, 5 million. I think for my comfort level, to be able to sit in a $5 million home, I would have to have a level of comfort that I know what I'm doing. So that's going to take some time at the lower levels to be able to do the research. But I say, hey, if you can swing a 5 million in Saratoga or Las Gatos, go for it. If you've got the confidence to do it, do the research, do the market research, you can do it. I mean, nothing's stopping you except yourself.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm looking for the same thing. I'm looking for properties that are in decent turnover areas, right? So like areas that I would farm. So if I'm looking at an open house, I'll take an open house if it's in my farm because I just want my face out there. And then B, it's like I could go to an open house that's $5 million and talk to 2 people in a day, and chances are both of those people are just wanting to go out and see a $5 million house. I did it. So like that's the thing. And I feel like when I can get at least 15 groups or something through a home, plus I'm also in an area where I'm more likely to find other listings also, because when I'm in an area where it's turning over 5, 6, 7%, the neighbors that come by, there's a much higher chance that they're selling versus like some Las Gatos neighborhood where the closest house is like half a mile down the road and there's like a 1% turnover. Yeah.
Anyone else? Did you find us the value?
Were there questions?
No,
On chat.
that was.
Just everybody.
Yeah.
Well, great. I want to thank you guys for taking your time and
Yeah.
sharing your expertise and, you know, are you guys gonna go out and do open houses now?
Good. Yeah. Very.